So I used to always be like, okay, when it's really, really cold, I always thought about going on holiday and like living in America, for example, like LA, because it's sunny all the time. And like anything, too much sex, too much food, too much TV, too much time with your partner, everything after a while becomes too much. And so if you had too much sun, you would want it to be cold. You would underappreciate having sun. And now the seasons are changing in England, where we've gone from summer to autumn. I'm really starting to appreciate the different smells and the different feel that autumn has compared to summer. And you see like the trees starting to fall off and it gets colder late at night and you can wrap up. And now I'm like, actually, I really appreciate all seasons, and having one thing, you would just take it for granted. And so having a choice of things really makes you grasp and appreciate the good things when it happens, like sun, even though it's cold for half the year.
So true. It's so true. I've actually been feeling like that myself recently, which is weird. I think I said to somebody in a conversation yesterday that I'm looking forward to winter, and Canadian winter's like kind of intense. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. There's something that's maybe shifting in me, that it's sort of the contrast of all that is, you know? Seasons are such a great metaphor for existence.
Yeah, and even though like life has been created from the sun, just like being there all the time, as a human, it's actually goes in our interest to have different things, because otherwise what's the point in life anyway? Like there isn't a point, so we have to find things to do. But the fact that we can look forward to summer when it's cold, or look forward to Christmas when it's hot, gives a human being another reason to appreciate life and keep going. Because all the animals do is they just get up and then I suppose they migrate when it gets cold or whatever. But for us, it's like we have something to look forward to. So as it's actually good for humans that we've got all these extra stuff that other animals pretty much don't have. They either go underground and sort of just stay there until it gets hot, or they migrate. So they never really experience the leaves and the cold because, they have to. They're always in the 18 degrees perfect heat, wherever that is. Like when per
Or
birds.
looking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny actually. We did some gardening for the first time. I mean, we're in like a tiny little apartment building, and so we would bring our plants in and out every single day. And one of our plants, well, actually a few of them, failed to thrive because they didn't have enough stress. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And it's because we shielded them from the elements. If it was going to be a little too cold, we'd bring them inside, and if it was too windy, we'd put them in a shelter. And so kind of protecting them and shielding them from these natural elements that provide the stress that they need to thrive. I just thought that was so fascinating because it's kind of the same thing for us too.
Talk to me about the stress. What do you mean by stress?
So they needed there's to experience stress. For example, the sun might burn away some of the leaves, and we would sort of try to protect them from that. But in losing that layer of protection, they're able then to expand and grow a little bit wider. And so when they become wider, they're actually more resilient, and they have sort of like the base to grow taller. But a lot of ours grew really, really, really tall, and they didn't have enough stress in order to get what they needed, I guess. Or some of them needed to be trimmed. Some of them needed to be chopped, like right at the top. When I would never even imagine, why would I chop the top off? They just got this big, but they needed that bit of stress so that they could do what they were supposed to do, which is evolve. And if they were in nature, nature would have taken care of that. But we were so busy trying to protect them from ever experiencing any stress that we sort of failed to thrive them.
Yes, I've got a thing called Californian poppies, and I've been chopping off the dead heads. Like every single time it flowers, it's got like this seed thing, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I've been chopping them off every single time the flower fucks off, basically, and the flowers and the buds just keep growing every day. There's just more and more and more flowers, and it's like if it was just left to nature, they wouldn't flower as much. So by me chopping off the head really increases the flower. And I planted for the first time. I went to the shop and bought basil plants, coriander plants, mint plants. They have grown 8 times what they were, and they flowered at the top. And I've never seen a basil coriander plant flower. And you're saying
Yeah,
about, chopping off the top does stuff. I mean, I've just let nature do what it's doing, but if you do chop
yeah,
stuff off, it does tell the plant to seed in other areas or flower in other areas. And
yeah,
when it was really hot, the leaves burnt. They literally burnt, right? And as you
yeah,
were saying, it means that it means that it has to do something else, like grow elsewhere or make the leaves wider to some shit like that. So it's
Yeah.
already designed to do what it needs to do. Like humans do not need to interfere and put it indoors and it's a bit cold, and like the flowers that they literally close up when it's cold and rainy. So why do
Yeah.
we need to do any of that shit? But
Yeah.
truly amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, plants.
Well, and it's funny because it's a lot like us in a lot of ways. But I mean, when you get close to a human being and you're talking about cutting heads off, like not literally, but I mean, you're cutting the heads off of these poppies and more are growing as a result. And it's kind of the same thing as trauma. It's the same thing as suffering. It's the same thing as all of the difficult experiences that we're exposed to that actually grow us so much, but we're so resistant to that. We don't look at it the same way that as nature. When we can accept these gruesome things about nature, we can accept that autumn is ultimately the death of everything spring and summer brought. And autumn is like this long like funeral process where all of the leaves are starting to decay. They're starting to go through this beautiful metamorphosis where they're either going to completely die or they're going to lay dormant for the winter season. And that's all fine and well when we're looking at nature, but the moment that we start dealing with the loss of our loved ones, it's like, hold on a second, this person was too young, or and it's like, well, wait a second, this is actually a huge part of the process. This is nature, we're part of it.
Yeah, like when the plant goes through the winter process, all the leaves drop to the ground, the bark maybe get rotten and it will fall off. That's mud and soil for the next seed to grow in. So if you didn't have that
Exactly.
mud, if you didn't have the leaves and the bark fall off to create mud, then the seeds wouldn't have anywhere to fertilize and grow. So that process is crucial. And if you think about animals, they have stress, meaning they are on alert for an animal about to eat them, right? That's good stress. That's like agile, like a boxer
Yeah,
needs that ability to quickly punch someone in the face when he doesn't know they're coming, right? But human stress is like they're stuck in an office all day for 8 hours with their boss, like, look, I'm going to fire you if you don't do this job. And then they think of their mortgage and their kids and their family and their house, and then like fucking grandma's healthcare. All that stress is not natural. So that's bad stress,
hmm
even though stress is
yeah,
good. And we're all getting the wrong type of stress. Like we can't deal
yeah,
with life, yet we have all this stress, but it's the wrong stress, and we're incapable of handling life situations where we're just fucking killing ourselves. Like we're putting ourselves in a disease state. But you look at nature, it's
absolutely.
that cycle. And yeah, looking forward to it's like autumn's like the long funeral grieving stage where you sort of have to grieve for say 6 months of the sun you had, right? And then
Yeah,
eventually
exactly.
there's like new life again, and it's like you leave a boyfriend or a girlfriend and you're like, oh, how am I ever going to love again? And then another person comes along and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing, look at her hair, look at her flower, look at the flowers, look at the teeth, yeah. And it's like, wow, that cycle doesn't end and people can always love again, and many times at one time, and it's not just one person forever and that's it. It's nonsense. It's just
Yeah,
like saying a plant's going to grow once and then it won't grow again. Nonsense.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so funny. It's funny though because you get close to humans and that whole nature thing doesn't seem as relatable anymore, even though it is like it's the exact same thing. We all go through cyclical seasons ourselves, and there's so many different stages of our own growth. But I think it's that like, we have such chronic stress. And I heard it said once, I can't remember who said this to me. They said, the human being is the only species that pays for a mistake more than once. And I thought that was so interesting because it's like, if a deer has a close encounter with a prey animal or a predator, rather, it's not going to beat itself up for months that, oh, I shouldn't have been down in that gully. Like I know that the wolves always hang out down there. I shouldn't have been doing that. I know better than this. It's like, no, they turn on that fight or flight. They get the hell out of there and then it's over and they go back to grazing. They don't have that chronic stress where we're like, oh, I hate my boss and I have to go into work. And, we perpetuate and perpetuate and perpetuate and really feed into this stress when, if there's nothing we can do, there's a level of acceptance we might need to come to. And if we can't accept, then we need to do something. But we're so stuck in maybe addicted to our own stress too. It's so interesting.
See, when you say addictive, it is true. Like the vibration our body's in becomes the norm and it becomes what we're used to. So if you've got a happy person coming in like, hi, do you want a coffee? You're like, fuck off, man. I've just woken up. Like you're not used to it. It's what
Yeah.
your body's used to. And like if you have a plant and it's used to like nice compost and sun and water, it's going to thrive. And if it's you put Coke on it, a Red Bull, it's not going to survive. So we are addicted to our default state of feeling, even though
Yeah.
it's not even though it's not our fault and it's not an addiction by choice. It is an addiction. We're used to that
Yeah.
feeling, like smoking. You're used to that feeling of how it feels when you smoke, or when you have a Chinese takeaway, the MSG, and how like
Mm,
energetic you are. Like if a kid has loads of like crisps and sweets, you're used to that
yeah.
feeling. Um, yeah, addiction is the right word. We are addicted to
Mhm.
stress, but it's the wrong stress, and it's like something's wrong if the boss is praising me. So you said to the boss, "Stop praising me. This is weird. You don't normally praise me." All right, then I'll
Yeah.
just keep calling you an asshole and like shouting at you. Unless that's crazy
Yeah.
because that's not we're seeking that
Yeah.
approval and
Yeah.
praise.
It's
It's
that like
sad.
self-saboteur in all of us, that's like, hold on, things are going too well, I need to sabotage it because I don't know how to cope with copacetic environments. I need to continue to get the feedback that I'm no good because I'm addicted to being no good. And the moment somebody turns that around on us, we don't know what to do, so we sabotage it. It's fascinating.
So like how we have sun and then it goes to the cold and then we have sun again. That's the same as like falling in love and then that high sort of just becoming the norm, and it goes down to just okay, now what should we do? Oh, let's just do that. That high's gone, which is the autumn bit. Now, if life is that continuous cycle, that says that we should always have a new lover, always have a new mate to have sex with, because we need that highs and that low. We need that chase and that low, but society's set up where we're supposed to have one person forever. So it actually goes against nature, which is why so many people end up in divorce. And there's so many problems in relationships because we know what nature is saying, but yet we're doing the opposite. And then when the nature part happens, we're shocked and we don't understand. So
Mm,
how do you live a life of what man has created and all the stuff that man's created, knowing that it's completely the opposite, like medicine and man-made vitamin C, when you just have to be eating fruit? Like
yeah.
we're doomed. It's like
Yeah.
you can't do anything about it because that's what life is. So what do you do? Knowing this, just ride the wave, and then hopefully, if we're going to split up, then we might do, but maybe not now, and we'll worry about it then. Or do you just know the drill of you got to keep it fresh? We've got to date all the time. We've got to do new stuff. We've got to not get comfortable and always be on show like we were when we first met to keep it fresh.
Mhm.
Like we don't we're not each other's item. I could leave at any point, so we've got to keep an effort going. Otherwise, you just start to eat, get fat, and don't give a shit.
Well, I think that's it though. It's like that complacency because it's like on one level we crave newness and we crave the high that we get from new experiences because it is very much it acts on our dopamine receptors in the brain, which is like the equivalent to heroin or sugar, the way that it excites the brain, right? And so we sort of are addicted to that high that we experience in new experiences or new relationships or new jobs or whatever. And then we don't know what to do when things get complacent. Although when you look at kind of the trend, even in the dating world, you look at the trend of people who are dating, they want to have that conversation, let's make it exclusive, and then as soon as you get there it becomes flat because at some level we're craving both of these things simultaneously. How can I have consistency and feel really rooted and grounded in my relationship while at the same time keep it new, keep it fresh, and keep it exciting so that I can satisfy the need to get high, and I think the biggest thing is like, I love Ram Dass and a lot of his teachings because he would talk about, how do I get high and not come down? And that's what he was exploring with psychedelics. And he would find the problem with psychedelics is that you always come down. I don't want to come down. And so he learned to find these things through meditation and through other practices. But I think it's so interesting because you get to that place where you're complacent, and it's the same thing with your job, and it's the same thing with everything that you kind of hate about your life is that it's the same old. But if we're not growing, like for me in my marriage, like my husband's not the same person that I married. He's not even the same person that I fell in love with. And we are changing at such a rapid rate that we're in a new relationship constantly because we're new people constantly. And if one of us chose to stop growing, that would probably be where things die, because that goes against life. Creation is evolution. And if we are, really sort of craving that complacency, that place where, okay, I've arrived at this place where I'm in a stable job and I have this stable relationship and nothing's ever going to change. We're trying to hold on to something that is evolutionary in nature, and that goes against all that is. You can't reach into a stream and grab a little bit of water and expect that you're going to be able to hold the whole stream in your hand. It keeps flowing. That's the nature of what it does. But we're so afraid. We're so afraid of change. It's just fascinating.
So do you see, to me, I think I thought or have, and I think about that a lot. You want that, say, date, and then you want them to yourself, right? And then you get them to yourself, and then you want new. So to me, it's like you crave our brains crave the dopamine rush, but
Mhm.
if there's always going to be, if that dopamine rush always becomes the norm, that means we're always going to crave another dopamine rush. So is the answer open relationships where you have that one person, and then you go out and seek the same kind of dating high until it fizzles out with people, but you've still got that love thing, which is that one person there, but the other people, it's just like a chase thing. Is that the solution, or is the whole thing just man-made anyway? And this thing about, love and marriage and stuff, it just goes against energy and cells, which is they die and then they divide and then they become two. Energy tracks to become one, and then it sort of repels. Like, that's how life works, that's how we work, that's how like sperm and egg works.
Yeah.
Is that how it works? And yet man has just created this fantasy of what it wants, and it's just never going to work. But if it does work, an open relationship, for example, is as close as it gets to having your cake and eating it.
I think, it's so funny because there's so much, what's the word? It's like there's a lot of the whole system has been infiltrated because the whole idea of separateness is elusive in nature. When you look at quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and you see that when something has come together, it can never be separate. Even when physically there is distance in between, it can never be separated. And so the whole idea, I mean, you hear it's such a cliche, like, oh, we're all one. Okay, yeah, we are. We actually are. And I think this is part of the problem, is that we're born into this like illusion of being separate. And we keep finding a lover in everybody because everybody is also us. And so we're sort of in some ways seeking to reconnect with aspects of ourselves. And then you have, I think, what the world breathes into everything, because the world tends to corrupt what is sacred and beautiful. And the world says, okay, well, we need to possess everyone. So then it becomes about lust, it becomes about sex, it becomes about this level of intimacy, when there's beautiful platonic love as well. There are, people that you might just love to have a conversation with all day, but you don't necessarily need to take it to that next level. And a lot of times when you do, it's really deeply unsatisfying because you're like, ooh, I just crossed a threshold that probably didn't need to be crossed, right? But the world has us addicted to this type of dating, this type of I don't know. It's so interesting because at some level we are all one. Um, and so we're seeking to reconnect with ourselves, and I think that's completely natural. And when you look at the addictive qualities that you find even within intimacy and dating, I mean, there is still like chasing that high, chasing that newness. And is there something wrong with that? For some couples, I mean, they have open relationships and that works very well for them. For a lot of people, there's not the self-assuredness, I guess. But I think, also looking at energetic qualities within other beings that we're sort of curious about. I think we're all alchemists in sort of like the deepest sense, that we're like, oh, what would my energy mixed with that energy be like, and we're just curious. But it's all an illusion. I mean, there's no such thing as separateness, and we die and we go back into the all, and we ditch the body and we realize, oh, it's you again, it's me. Hello. But there is no separateness. And I think it's only natural for us to pursue what that might feel like, because ultimately that's the idea of coming together with one another in intimacy, is that you at one point merge into oneness, with another person. And at a core level, I think that's what we're seeking more than anything else.
Yeah, so as you're saying, like everything is this, that, and both. We're all connected, different parts of us. We see different parts of us in other people, so we're attracted to the old part of us, even the traits of our parents and our grandparents and friends,
Yeah.
and the version we want to be. And so to think that once you like have a friend and then you've got something from them and then you're off, that's not how it works. Like we're still connected. Your thoughts are now connected to their thoughts. So when they think about you and you think about them or something related to them, that's not your thought. That's because of them. And they could be anywhere in the world. And now that
Hmm.
thought has influenced your thought. I know I met somebody on Instagram from Canada and I knew when she was thinking about me. And I text her saying, I'm trying to sleep. Can you stop thinking about me? Because I could not sleep. But that's
Yeah.
crazy, right? Someone
Yeah.
I've never met, opposite side of the world, and I had to text her, stop thinking about me because it was so strong, it was so intense that I couldn't get her off my mind. Um, like this thing
That
about,
sounds like twin flame energy there.
I mean, I don't think she is a twin flame, but anyway, so yeah, so like man like says, you should have one person, as in one energy connects to one, and you're done. But as you know, if that person grows and you don't, you become out of sync. You got to grow
Yeah.
together. And it's like,
Yeah.
unless you are, say, twin flames, right, where you're
Yeah.
the same energy, focus on the same growth, naturally, most people, if it's just somebody from school or somebody you've met from work, you might have an attraction at that point in your life. You get
Mhm.
together, but they don't grow. It's going to become out of sync. And if you have kids, their energies are going to be imbalanced too. And then the cycle just continues for the generation below.
So true.
Um, I used to be all about, this one person. And then I found the one person, my twin flame. And then I realized that we are so strong and independent that we're too similar, happy by ourselves, that coming together is too intense that you'd rather
Hmm.
not. So now it's like, okay, so this vision of one person, which I always knew was out there, doesn't exist. Now what? And the answer is, if you've got two energies the same, you repel. You need an imbalance somewhere. Not enough where you're two different people, but there needs to be a slight imbalance where you're not exactly the same, where one
Yeah.
person can grow and depend and learn from you more than the other. Even if you can't learn from them in any way because you're more too
Yeah.
enlightened, there needs to be a slight imbalance where they feel a need to come back to you, and that means you can't be ever with the twin flame because
I don't know. I don't know about that. I think those are the most difficult relationships that you can. I know a lot of people who have like released twin flame relationships, because they're the most difficult relationship I think that you'll ever have. Um, but I think also, like, in so many ways, like, we don't really know. I think it's so interesting because, like, obviously, like, when you're talking about this idea of the one, that's very religion. Like, that's what religion said. Religion said we come together in sacred, holy matrimony, and we merge under God, and that's religion. When we look at why are we actually here on this planet, and we could debate about that forever, because I mean, how am I going to answer that question for you? For me, what I have come to understand, and I'm open, whatever I understand is so open to learning more and building on it. But we came here to learn about ourselves, and every single person that we cross paths with, that we're drawn to in one way or another, has like codes for us. And that could just be the way that we interact with one another. There's something about who they are that stirs something about who we are, and it helps for us to explore. And I think that when we become so fixated, because a lot of the times we're looking at love in the wrong way. What we're actually looking at is attachment. It's not love. And so, if it were true love, we would be able to very easily move in and out of those things. Some things might last forever, most do not. And, in those circumstances, we have to be willing to say, wow, this person taught me so much about this particular topic. It's time to release that and take on what's new. And I think that's where we get stuck, is because we're in attachment. If we were actually in love versus attachment, we would be able to see, oh wow, this relationship is no longer serving either one of us. Let's release it. Let's clear it. Let's move on. But instead, we say, no, we have a house together. We have children together. We have, it's complicated. And it's only complicated because the world makes it so. But we're not really, I don't think, in many cases, talking about love. We're talking about attachment. And then we have the scars of attachment when a relationship is over. And it's like, all of those, the hurt feelings and the traumas or the pain that we go through in a breakup, that usually one person suffers a little more than the other based on their level of attachment. But it's like wanting to keep someone forever is not love. That's imprisonment. That's like putting them in jail. Okay, you're mine, and I'm going to lock you away, and you're never going to, look anywhere else except for to me, that I somehow am going to satisfy all of your needs. And I don't know how practical that is. I think that's part of the problem, is that we get into these relationships and we look to that person and say, wow, like, why aren't you satisfying my best friend need? Like, you're not satisfying that need. Now I have to outsource that need. Of course you do. How are you going to find everything that you need in one person? Everybody else that's around you, and the potential for who you could become really rests on this broad spectrum of having different people to go to for different things. It's so complicated, it feels, for relationships.
So when I was 21, I fell in love, right? And looking back now, as you said, it wasn't in love, it was attachment. I'd never found
Yeah.
somebody who I'd connected with like that before. So to me, when I was a dependent, I was a semicircle. She was a semicircle. We made each other a circle, aka complete, right? So looking back, we never got together. We weren't having sex. I really wanted to be her boyfriend, but I was scared of rejection, so I never said anything. Looking back now, that wasn't in love. It was a toxic, desperate, needy, anxiety, heart pounding. Oh my God, like scared to lose her.
Yeah.
It was not love, right? So I thought, okay, if that's in love, now I'm complete and I don't need anybody. I can never be in love. I can only love somebody because I don't need that energy to complete me, which I'm in, the in love, the in harmony. So I'm never going to get hurt again. So I can love you, love anyone on the planet, but I'm never going to be like, oh my God, please don't go because I have myself. And then someone the other day told me that that is not what love means. That's a made up fantasy of what we're taught love means, like fairy tale or, God says one is this, whatever. It's love is about being in harmony with somebody. It's not supposed to hurt. You either disharmony or you're in harmony. So when you think about love, there's different levels of love, like how much you love that person, but it never ends up being hurt, whether it's a friend, a colleague, a partner, a mother, a
Yeah.
child. It's just a stronger version of love. It's not supposed to hurt. And if it does hurt, it's not love, it's attachment. And then it's like, well,
Yeah.
why are you attached to that person or the idea of that person? And then, so it
So
is
true.
very, very complicated. And I'm realizing that if you take away our bodies, we're just vibration. Our ancestors are made up of everyone's vibration at some point. So whether it's frequency 0 to frequency 1 billion, right? Every human has been that or will be that, and ancestors were that. We're all connected, which is why you can meet so many people and feel connected to almost any human being if you choose to find the connections rather than the disagreements like politics and
Absolutely.
religion. So and then the physical looks actually become irrelevant. Even though
Yeah.
the physical looks might be a reason why you are attracted to them, you always will connect to a human being. And then it's like, okay, well, so this person cleans, this person gives me great sex, they've got money, they're funny, they can do accents, they can sing, but her mother's an arsehole, she doesn't like me, she wants two kids and I only want one, so I don't want that person. And then you go to the next person and they tick off, say, 7 out of 10. And then you find somebody who's got one of those three which that person didn't have, but hasn't got the seven. So let's just say the sex. And then you go to her for sex and you forget the dinner and the cooking and all the other stuff that the one before gave you, which was more than the sex. So now you sacrificed like you sacrificed seven great things for one thing you weren't having. But then that seven things weren't enough. So you wanted that one extra thing you weren't getting. So what that says is that
Mm.
like the energy never settles. It never you grab that you put a hand in the stream to grab that water, but it's still
Yeah.
flowing. It never ever settles. So then what does that say? That no one is ever going to truly be happy, but to understand how life is, You have a choice of being a free bird and sort of having multiple relationships for however long they last, or having the dynamics of one relationship and what that comes with. Roast dinner on a Sunday with their parents, going for
Yeah.
walks, cooking with them, having baths with them. And it comes down to a choice. There's no right or wrong. It's just, what do
Yep.
you want more? What's more innate for you? What did your parents have that you're prone to, like what you're used to? What does your sister got, your brother got? End of the day, we crave what the majority have, which we haven't got. And if that is, say, a harmonious relationship, putting up with their nonsense, like the toilet, the toothpaste not lid being on and shit like that, then that's what we're gonna end up craving more, even though it's not everything that we want, because you can't have everything. And I think that people
Well,
always want more and lose everything.
yeah, look at like, I mean, I'm so fascinated with ancient history. Look at the rise and fall of so many civilizations. And why did that happen? Because nothing was ever enough. We were never, ever, ever satisfied. And so, I mean, I think that even just the idea of being happy, um, I reject that in so many ways because I think that goes against everything. That goes against the cyclical, seasonal nature of life. Are you willing to be both happy and unhappy? Are you willing to go through both of those seasons? We're not. And so we say as soon as shit gets hard in a relationship, I'm out of here. I'm done. You're not providing me. I can't draw sustenance from you any longer. So I'm done. I'm out. And it's so interesting because I think it also depends on what your archetypes are. What did you come here to experience in this life? It's like we have these contracts that we decide upon before we come into human form. And it's like, right, okay, I want to learn about forgiveness in this lifetime. So who's up to betray me so that I can learn something to forgive? You got to give me something to forgive. I can't come here and learn forgiveness unless I have a reason to forgive. So who's going to sign up to hurt me? Okay. And then, you end up, for me, I mean, it's like how many toxic relationships that I was into that were super abusive, and those were there to teach me something. I wouldn't be able to learn what I needed to learn from those had I not had those experiences. And that seems to be a contract I came in here with. And so it's like, well, what did you come to experience? And can you honor that? Some people came to maybe experience monogamy, they might have to be cheated on a few times before they get into that like one relationship where they can fully trust, because there's aspects of them. You have to always learn the contrast before you can learn the other thing, because there's this like juxtaposition from which we experience things. So it's like with happiness, I'm like, is that the goal? Not really for me. The goal for me is peace. And peace is sort of like this place where we say, oh, okay, this tragedy is happening over there. And here I am sitting in my own peace. Oh, okay, this joyful experience is happening over here. That's nice. I'm not going to attach myself to it because attachment causes suffering. So I can enjoy this happy, joyful experience and also just still be super neutral and super in peace. And I think that's one of the really paradoxical parts, because we are so wired to seek our ultimate happiness. We get there and we're like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But now I have a juxtaposition from which I can realize there's more happiness to be had. So this was cool. This satisfied my need when I was searching for it. But now that I've arrived, it's like I'm standing at a different vantage point and I'm like, well, hold on. I didn't know there was something over there. I'm going to go explore that. Right. And it's like this, like humanity's never ending desire to pursue and conquer and experience all that there is. And is that wrong? No, I think it's built into our very DNA. It's built into creation. But it's interesting to observe.
Before I reply, your camera has frozen. Can you switch it off
Oh,
and then on, and it should fix it.
better.
Okay, we are back. Yeah, it's true. Like if you look at like for example, presidents and politics, they're always trying to. You're even in a job. Think about it. When you go to a job company, you start off at the bottom and you want to work your way up, and you get more money, more power, and then there's always like something else you want. Right? You go to another company, something different. You go from gym to say restaurant industry, and it's like that doesn't. It's not making me happy. And what you said is the secret. It's not happiness we are seeking. It is peace. Peace meaning you're happy, but you accept the fact that there's always going to be shit around you. There's always going to be something better, and better boyfriend, a nicer meal, a better restaurant, nicer car, and if you're ever going to be chasing another high, well, no matter what it
Yeah.
is, a new sofa, new wallpaper, new TV, new boyfriend, like everything, there's always someone else. So
Yeah.
it's like, how do you either do you go out and get everything, or do you not? But if you don't have said that most up-to-date technology, you're going to become out of sync and left behind. So then when you look at it
Hmm.
like that, it's like, well, actually, I have to keep up. But then you realize no, because there's always going to be something else, and you have to you've got to have a foundation within yourself, like that peace bit, where you accept the fact that there's always going to be new information out there, which I can't always learn. Because if I'm learning all this information, I can't do anything because it's going to take time, and then time to do this and time to do that. And you realize, wow, if every human shut their brain down for 5 minutes and stopped thinking, and there'd be no ideas, there'd be no nothing, what am I left with? And I'm just left with me and myself, and that peace, and accepting that it's going to rain, it's going to storm, some animals might die, I could be eaten. That's just life, and that then you truly gain power over everything in life, because when people are out and there's, say, a car accident, and they're like, well, why are you not panicky? Like, did you, like, no, you're not scared? And you're like, no, it's just life. Like, that's just what it is. Your friends are like, you crazy? Like, we even fucking died. And you're like, well, we didn't die. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna allow this situation to affect after. Like, we're not dead, so let's move on. Let's enjoy the night. And that
Yeah.
comes from experience of pain. Like, we have to learn, we have to feel the pain in order. I have a scenario called jacket scenario, which means you have to forget your jacket in order to remember your jacket next time when it's cold. You can't just rely on your friends to give you it when they're out, because
Yeah.
you're now relying on them to bail you out if it gets cold. Whereas
Mhm.
if your friend said, no, I'm not giving you my jacket, and you freeze your bollocks off, now
Yeah.
every time you leave the house, you're going to remember jacket, right? So it's
Exactly.
about, you got to learn your own pain in order to learn. And
Yeah.
I
But
think
isn't that
that's you.
so funny? Like that's like the biggest, like you see this a lot playing out in relationships, And I was talking to my mom about this recently because we have, one of my younger sisters, let's say she's failing to thrive. And at some level, I said to my mom, like, are you done coddling? Like, are you gonna let her forget her jacket, essentially, because she's not going to learn anything when you keep coming behind her and shoveling all the shit she's leaving behind. Like, you're gonna have to let her make a mess, sit in the mess, and when she's ready to clean it up, figure out how to do that. And that actually provides her with so much more than you could ever teach her verbally. You can't teach people that. You have to let people literally wade through their own crap and figure out how to get out of it if they want to. Because in so many levels, we're addicted to our own suffering too. It's like I've said to this very sister, like, okay, so if you never got to tell me your whole trauma story, then who would you be? Let's say you never told that story again, then what's left to tell? Who are you? Oh, you're nothing without that story. Like, all right, well, maybe get a new story because you're clearly very attached to this is who I am because these are what happened to me. I'm like, you're just living in the past. You're not living in the present moment. You're not creating in the present moment. You're creating from the past. And that's a choice. Go for it. That, if you came here to experience suffering, by all means, who am I to interfere with that? um, yeah, it's interesting, but we get in each other's way a lot with that.
In the animal kingdom, like, you've got little, like, African tribes people, like 4 years old, right? They're literally climbing trees, hunting fish at 4 years old, and they can literally just fuck off and start a family at 10, right? No,
Yeah.
they do. Like, they have kids really,
Yeah.
really young, because there's no such thing
Yeah.
as kids. It's just do what you're doing, like apes, just
Yeah.
mating, and that's it, right? And yet, with the first generation, where the generation above hasn't taught us how to survive, instead, they have used us to fulfill their needs of isolation or separation or fulfillment.
Safety.
So
Yeah.
now our parents are fixing our problems. They're nurturing us too much. They're rubbing our leg when we hurt, and don't cry. And they're doing everything for us. They're cooking our foods and washing our clothes. And the generations now are like, what the fuck do I do? And then as a natural mother or a father, you want to help your child, so you go, oh, I'll wash it for you. And now their purpose is their kid again, because I do believe that although having kids is natural, we do choose to have kids, but we choose to have kids because one of the reasons why I believe people choose to have kids is because we're trying to find a purpose. And it's easy just to have a kid, and then our purpose is done for 20 years. And then when
Yeah.
our kids move out, you notice that mums and fathers, they're lost because their whole
Yeah.
life was their kids, right? And now they're lost.
Yeah.
So now what do I do? And now they literally do nothing until the kids come over, until they can cook, until they can, go on walks with them. And it's like you do have a life too, like your life isn't
Yeah.
just waiting for your kid to come around next week. And then it becomes like you don't want your kid to see your pain or your weakness or your lack of
Mm,
independence. So you hide your feelings, and then the kid feels like they have to help you. And then now the kid is going back in time to solve problems. Now their generation is fucked, and now everything's flipping. It's like it's in reverse, and it's not supposed to be like that. And my dad, from an early age, taught me all the mistakes that he made. Now that was good, but it was also a curse because
mm,
I didn't learn any mistakes myself. So when the reality of those mistakes happened, like my car broke down, I was a mess, anxiety. I didn't know
yeah.
what to do. I didn't know what to fucking do because I just used to call my dad and he would do it. So
Yeah.
although I never had those issues growing up, when the reality sets in those situations, what do? I'm a bloody mess because I never had that
Yeah.
experience of learning how to deal with these situations as it evolves like an animal. If it goes into a river and there's a crocodile, he will know next time, don't go in a river that you don't know has crocodiles in. And so everyone's teaching our kids like don't make these mistakes because you naturally don't want to see your kid hurt. But in the animal kingdom, you have to learn your mistakes. You've got to fall from that coconut tree without your parent catching you, but so you don't fucking climb a one that's too high.
Yeah.
And it's the same as medicine, which is why everyone's got disease because medicine is just healing everyone rather than ourselves. And I'm used like, hang on a minute, what happened to me? You last used me when I was 10. I've not been used for 10 years, and now there's a
Yeah.
flu that comes along, and you're fucked. And then the medicines
Yeah.
industry's like, I got some, I got a jab for you. Like, oh, I'll heal you. And you're like,
Yeah.
wow, if I don't have this, I'm gonna die. And everyone else around you is like, well, we need you in our life. Like, don't die. So now you're living for that person, and that's one of the reasons why I believe if somebody's
Yeah.
gonna die or kill themselves, they're going to do it regardless of how much you help them. So helping them today, you're just prolonging the problem until say next week. If somebody's got such a weak immune that they get cancer over and over and over and over again, I wouldn't personally want to live through the pain of cancer and all it has to deal with for 10 years. If I'm going to die eventually, like put me out of my misery now, stamp on my
Yeah.
head, right?
Yeah.
So keep people alive because you can't live without them. That's not
Yeah.
fair. That's like
Attachment.
keeping a lion in a cage because you like
Yeah.
you like showing your friends the lion when he comes around. It's
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
it's not.
But it's so faux pas to have that conversation because then we sound like these heartless, insensitive, and it's like it's
Yeah,
so funny because I'm so fascinated by death.
same.
And I just think like it's the most natural thing ever. And for me, I'm like, guys, like this is the only thing we know for sure that we're gonna die. That the fact that we're alive means we're gonna die. And like why are we not spending our whole lives pursuing what's on the other side of that? Instead we're like, okay, well, we will never talk about it, but let's work 9 to 5 and let's build this capitalistic system that enslaves the many for the benefit of the few. And let's give each other a false sense of security. And I'm like, what? Like if breathing clean air means I'm gonna die, okay, okay. How am I going to be in resistance of life? To be scared of death is to literally be paralyzed from living. And it's just such a paradox that I don't think we realize, and no one wants to talk about it. And it's so fascinating because we talk a lot about how like, oh well, with modern medicine we're living longer, and I say no, we're actually dying longer. We're actually prolonging the death phase, and we're suffering more than we have to. And is it helpful that we can, break a bone and go and have it completely rebuilt? Absolutely. That's incredible. There's so many beautiful things that modern medicine has to offer. But at the same time, when we're putting band-aids on everything, what happens in the body, and I say this to my clients a lot, they say, okay, I need something for sleep. And I'll say, okay, but just remember, when you're taking something for sleep, you're telling your body, hey, don't worry about producing melatonin because I'm just going to go ahead and outsource that. You can just shut production down. We don't need you anymore. And that's what happens. We start to turn ourselves off at so many levels that we're incompetent and incapable of dealing with the very nature of life, which is change. Whereas when we see things like a virus or a bacteria, that's our upgrade from the earth. That's the earth saying, hey, shit's about to get really hard. Here's an an upgrade because you need to have this upgrade in order to survive. And yet here we are rejecting that very essence of creation. I mean, our RNA is made up of viruses. Like it's the information. Majority of viruses are actually very, very good. But because we don't know anything about viruses, we're outsourcing our autonomy really to the governments and to the powers that be, and saying, here, you make decisions for me because I'm incapable. And yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting because I think there's so many deeper problems. I mean, it's the same way that we, if we are parents, that we coddle the children. It's the same way then, as citizens of a country, we allow the government to coddle us. We spend, let's say, 60 years in the workforce, or however long we work for. And I mean, I met a man the other day who was literally, he's got dementia or something. He's lost, and he's like, oh my God, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I don't know what to do. I'm like, listen, mate, you're retired. You don't actually have to do anything, but you're just so used to having to show up somewhere on time and give your time away that you're confused now. It's so interesting.
Yeah, people always they're always used to doing something, and it's like that's just a pattern. Like if you're used to it's just everything's a learnt trait. I was gonna say? It's like we die because of our energy expires. It's not necessarily to do with the biology, right? Because if it was, you could take all these medicines and you would live that extra longer. But if that all these medicines, right, and your body was say your energy expires when you're 70, if you're taking all these medicines, vitamin C, D, zinc, fucking potassium, all this other shit, right? Skin creams, you're tricking your body into believing that it's like living, but it isn't.
Sure.
It's actually you don't realize it because the medicine's like counteracting that feeling of what it would feel like without it, but you're causing problems. So it goes down to, if I am weak and I'm always going to get cancer all the time, do I want to go for all the pain and all the shit and all the chemotherapy and all the sympathy and all going to the doctor and the stress of getting a car to pay for it, or just put me out of my misery now? Because in evolution, you're supposed to have kids and then the cycle starts again and they learn from your mistakes. So we're supposed to, over time, learn our mistakes like karma, not fix them all now with man and its medicine and its machine. Um, yeah, so when you look at it like that, I don't believe it's like creams. They don't actually do anything. Like they might make your skin softer, but it's not changing the cells and the biology of your skin on a cellular level. And they make your skin even drier, and it actually causes more problems. So again, my mum has spent
It's the
fucking
dependency. Yeah.
thousands on creams, and
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not doing shit. I mean, it's crazy how much money is spent on man-made shit. As you said, man is smart. If you break a bone in the animal kingdom, that lion would just die in the heat, right? We have a second chance. If, for example, I chose to smoke 50,000 cigarettes a day and got cancer, and I could have that chemo, and I had the wisdom to understand why I got that in the first place, then yeah, I would use man-made tools because we're smart. We can do that now to get myself out. But if my body's immune from generations of ancestors and weak people just following, and the immune's weak and they're eating bad and they're sleeping bad and they've been living by a train track, then my body isn't going to be equipped to ever heal itself enough to live without man. And that's just like reality of life. You got to just accept the fact that that tree you plant in your garden, no matter how much you water it, how much you give it compost, nice compost, it's just that seed isn't strong enough. The roots aren't strong enough. It's just gonna die.
Yeah. That's it. Like my husband planted an avocado tree and
Crazy.
he's been like growing it. We live in Canada. There is no point for us to try to grow this tree. It's not going to thrive. It's never going to bear fruit. And I'm sort of like in this weird place because he was just curious if he could do it. And so he keeps it in a special place in the wintertime to keep it warm and giving it like all of the artificial environment that it needs to think that it's in the right climate. But at some point in time, it's going to come to this point where we're either going to have to drive to a warm climate to plant it somewhere where it can live forever and thrive, or we're gonna have to let it go, because this isn't the climate. And this is exactly what our environment is trying to do. It gives us this like false sense of security that, oh, don't worry, you can just get the flu shot. But it's like, well, hold on a second, I need the flu. It's actually like what's going to keep me stronger. But we have this fear of anything that makes us weak because we don't value what vulnerability has to offer, which is actually where we draw all of our power from, is from our most vulnerable places. And again, because we don't really understand life, we're scared to die, and yet we're so afraid of dying that we're not actually living. It's so paradoxical.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. if a virus will either kill you or it's just the virus. It's not good or bad. It's just there. Bacteria, it's just there. Okay. So when, mum's like, wash your hands because you've touched this, touched that, I'm like, it's either going to kill me or it's not, which means it's good or it's bad. It's not like, this is really good, that's really bad, this is neutral. It's just like life. And again, washing your hands so much doesn't expose your body to what you need. Like when you get a flu or a cold, you're not just fighting off that specific pathogen or flu, you're basically telling your immune system to be on alert for anything. And that's a good thing. Like, get prepared for food you eat, get prepared for
Yeah.
air when the climate changes, get prepared for this, get prepared for that. It's not just specifically you take this flu jab for COVID, because now your body's like, well, I've only learned how to fight the COVID-19. Well, how about COVID-20 or COVID-2 or fucking COVID-9, Lair? But
Yeah.
if you allow your body to be exposed to just say a natural pathogen, it's not just COVID. There's many things around it. It's like if you get say HIV, you've probably got chlamydia as well because it's all to do with different stuff, right? If you have a vitamin C tablet, you don't get all the vitamin that you would get in a
No.
banana. It's not just vitamin C. There's so many
Yeah.
cells and chemicals that you haven't even
Yeah.
man's not even labeled yet. It's like it doesn't even know
Yeah.
it exists.
Exactly.
Like, but
Yeah.
that is what you need. So you give yourself like,
Well, and they're synergistic, they go together. So you take
yeah,
that out, you take the vitamin C out of the orange, let's say, and you're missing 10,000
yes.
phytonutrients that were supposed to go with the vitamin C because that activates it. It provides the enzymes to break it down. It's like this symbiotic system that we're just like, oh, okay, I like this fraction of it. I'm going to take that, you know?
I got bitten by a false widow spider last year and it bit me on the nose and it got infected because I just let nature deal with it. I didn't call a doctor or anything. Now I'm looking back, I should have at least cleaned it. But anyway, so the infection took me down for 3 weeks. It was like 4 times worse than the flu. I was shitting, I was pissing, I was being sick, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't walk. It was awful, and I thought it was a tummy bug. But now I realize it was the spider bite, but I didn't realize it was at that time the spider bite. So now I've been exposed to, say, the venom of a spider. Does that mean I can now tolerate other spider venoms or maybe snake venom or mosquito venom? If I've gone to the doctor and they give me antibiotics, my body wouldn't have had to work its immune to fight it and therefore learn how to fight future stuff like that. Not only that, but the antibiotics will kill my microbiome, which would destroy, my intestine, whatever is in there, which
Yeah.
means I might be more likely to an autoimmune disease because you've now killed the gut microbiome to protect me, which causes other issues, which means my immune's weak, which means when I do get bitten by a fly, I'm down again. So
Yeah.
we are supposed to deal with pain and shit and what life has to offer. And if you can't, then you've just got a weak energy, like tough shit. Your ancestors will learn over time. Humans can't save every human and give every African a tap for water and every African food because he hasn't got food and water. I'm like, you do know that Americans over thousands of years were in that position where they were just in a desert and then they moved inward and they learned how to harvest and grow crops. You know, those Africans have to learn for like through generations to move inward. You can't just UNICEF comes along or the UN comes along, builds a house because like, well, how did he build the house? How can they teach their ancestors how to build a house, how to, dig water up, how to learn from experience, how to climb the tree to get food, how to grow crops? Now, UN drops a helicopter with all this food. Yeah, you're saving all these people now, but over time, when there's no UN and there's no planes because technology fucks up, how are they going to learn that shit over generations? And then you realize we have to learn our mistakes. You cannot just be taught, you know,
You can't be given
can't be
anything.
given the answers.
Yeah.
Like at
And
school, when we talk,
that's also what we want
yeah,
because of the indoctrination of our education, right? Like the unfortunately in many ways the white man, let's say, has come in and said, oh, don't worry about this, we'll give it to you, don't worry about that, we'll teach it to you, don't worry about this. And we've been removed from living naturally with the earth. We don't even know what natural means anymore because we're so in this like fake environment with fake oxygen and fake lighting and fake food and fake antibiotics and all of these things that it's like we go into the Amazon forest to find cures for the next year's disease, and then we say, okay, let me just tweak it in a few ways because you can't patent nature, and now all of a sudden it's going to do a lot of good, but it's also going to have these side effects because it's not natural. And that's what we've done in every corner of the earth, is we've taken away what is natural and replaced it with something man-made that has limitations and flaws. And yeah, I mean, it's like we're our own worst enemy. This whole failure to thrive is because of our attachment to someone else giving us the handouts, giving us the answers, giving us the medicines.
This is why AI is just gonna be. It's like it's just gonna be the end of human evolution, because if human evolution is about learning so much and evolving so quick through brain trial and error, cause and effect, whatever, you've got a robot taking the commands of other humans and telling you where your brain isn't stimulating its own neurons to find answers. So now what do? Now it's like our parents' generation times 10, because now we're following what our parents say rather than working it out ourselves. Our brain is completely brain dead. Like our boss tells us what to do, we just follow. That's why a lot of employees get dementia, because their brain's overused by excessive working shit out that person said. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Do you
Even
think
the way we get like ready, we put our pants on. The same foot goes in the one pant leg, and then we do everything as repetition, you know?
if you think about what how we are living now in terms of surviving, but yet we're not, because we're actually killing ourselves. And let's say all this stuff is supposed to keep us alive to say 80, but majority say die at 60. If you go back in time before all this man-made shit, how people thousands of years ago would have lived as till say 50 and died at 70. Have we really served any purpose? Like living to 50 with nothing and dying at say 60 with a little bit of like pain and suffering, versus living to 70, 80 with all this man-made shit, but actually dying at 60 or 50. Is that what I'm trying to say? Have we really
Like you're
evolved?
dying before you're dead.
It's like the aim is to survive, so we're alive, but we're not really living. You go back to
Yeah.
say 2000 years ago, they might have say died at 50, but they were living up until 50. Whereas
Yeah.
we might live now till 70, but we are brain dead inside. We're physically depleted. So we still
Yeah.
die at 50. So really, we haven't really, it's a waste of time.
Yeah. 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 And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's so funny because I mean, it's such a like it's such a tough conversation to have without sounding completely heartless, you know. It's like such a different level of consciousness to have that kind of conversation, because that's exactly how I feel. Like we're not really living longer, we're dying longer. We like life was over for us. So many people, even once they retire, they die shortly after, because that their job was their identity, and then they don't have a job anymore, and all of a sudden they have no identity, no purpose, they don't know who they are, and it's like they self-destruct, you know.
Every day merges
And
into one.
yeah,
Two
yeah,
o'clock again.
whereas because we don't know how to be, all we know how to do is do. We're doers, we're not being. We're human beings, we're supposed to be, we're supposed to be present to every single moment. And when you're not, I mean, we live in our minds, which means that we're either living in the past or a projection of the future that hasn't happened yet, and therefore it doesn't exist. So we're not actually even existing in the real world, in real time, in this time and space, on this dimension. We're living in our own fantasy land, which is kind of weird when you think about every single person is living in their own version of reality, you know? And it's so
Right.
funny because I always feel like when I'm leaving my apartment, like I'm coming into the matrix, and I'm like, all right, who am I going to see out here in the world? Like, oh, there's someone that's afraid of this C-19. Okay. Yep. Like, where's the mask, you know? Because it's like, what do I need to survive out there? Like, it's so interesting. And all of that, like, it doesn't even come into my reality. That's just not where I'm living. And yet you come into somebody else's vibration and you're like, whoa, the fear is strong over here. That's interesting. What an interesting choice you're making for your existence, you know?
It's like I see people in their car with their mask on. I'm like, what do you think the fuck's gonna happen? The flu's gonna fly through the air vent and up into your car, or they're walking in the middle of a field with their mask on. I'm like, you do know there needs to be a human being here, or to like get your stupid mask off. Anyway, I want to end on a high, so we've got something to continue for the next time. Plug anything you want to plug, the social medias, projects you're doing, whatever.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I was supposed to be taking a group of people to Costa Rica to do some deep inner journeying, and that's not happening now. So, I mean, it's kind of an interesting time frame. I mean, right now I've been focusing a lot personally just on my own self-growth and development, and that's kind of slowly trickling into the podcast that I have. I'm kind of getting to the stage where I'm going to start having conversations, so maybe you'll have to join me over there.
Yeah, I can.
But yeah, for the time being, I've been doing a lot of plant medicine ceremonies, and a lot of ego deaths, and a lot of very difficult processing. And I honestly, this whole 6 months, I've probably never been happier. I actually feel more at peace, more grounded, more at ease with the way the world is going. Because I'm like, oh, thank God, the break that no one was ever prepared enough to take. Like, and I don't know. I'm sort of excited. I feel like the world is
It's
changing.
sickening, but I am as well. Like
I know.
that human needs a wipeout. There's too many humans on the planet, too many problems, too many interferences, too much politics, too much religion, too much food, too
Yeah,
much anger, too much fucking vegan, black lives, everything. Everything's fucking all one. It's all merged into one. And it's like
yeah.
people just need to be themselves, but everyone's merged into one, right? And in terms of a species point of view, we need a good wipeout of at least, I don't know, a billion or 2 billion humans, right? But in terms of if my nan got COVID and died, I'd be very upset and I blame the government. But I look at it from both perspectives. I'm not like
Yeah,
one narrow-minded. I see the both sides. But if too many trees are
yeah,
together and there's a fire, they're all going to burn down. But then all that burn creates new life, new soil for the next generation.
yeah,
But yeah, humans
exactly.
need a good wipeout, and I am excited to see, as sickening as this is, what will happen because it needs to happen for stability of civilization. It needs to happen. There's too many weak people, and just sucking the life out of, say, everything. NHS, like it's supposed to be, you break your leg, will fix you. Now every fucker who smokes goes to the NHS. Everyone who's got a cough goes to the NHS. Everyone's got dementia goes to the NHS. And then you're fucking like taking all the nutrients from everything. And I am excited
Yeah,
to see
yeah,
what God, if there is a God, whatever, has
yeah,
involved. He's like, listen, bruv, you're fucking up the planet. There's whales
yeah,
choking on bottles. I'm gonna wipe you the
yeah,
fuck out. And you're not gonna be able to make a vaccine for 2 years. Don't even try, okay? A
yeah.
million's died so far. I'll get at least, 100 mil, and then I'll be happy. And then, yeah, it's just very interesting.
It's like, I think it's very possible that we're witnessing the fall of a civilization. And it's
I
kind of a
do
cool
agree.
time to be alive. And as morbid as that sounds, I actually think this whole situation is a freaking beautiful catalyst,
It's good.
because now we're paying attention. Now we're
Yeah.
like, oh, hold on, like I can't just take a tablet and be better. Like I've had more people come to me now. I stopped my nutrition practice, and all of these people are coming to me like, what is an immune system? How do we do this? And it's like, oh, you're finally paying attention. How cool. Like now we have your attention. This is brilliant. And yeah, like let's talk about the nitty gritty stuff. I think people are dealing with, it's like we as a collective, as a species, have manifested this occurrence, and now we're witnessing, ooh, what does fear look like? Let's see what that looks like, because we're going to have to reconcile that within ourselves. It's the deep, dark, uncomfortable dark night of the soul for the whole freaking planet. And I'm like, oh sweet, I've done this before. Let's sit back, make some popcorn, and see how it all unfolds. So I think there's a
No,
lot of
literally, that's
catalysts.
how
There's,
I think.
you know, yeah, there's a lot of potential. I think it's beautiful. And unfortunately, pain and suffering is built into this whole life experience, and so to reject that, it puts you sort of in a different level of consciousness, a different vibration. And to those people, what we're talking about is probably sounds super fucked up, but at the same time, for those that are like sort of getting it, that are understanding, there's a lot of people waking up to these new realities, to these new levels of consciousness. And I think it's really cool. It's really cool to see. It's possibly the fall of our civilization, but from what we've seen, this is the cycle the Earth goes through. Look back in time. Look at all of these ancient civilizations that have risen to greatness and fallen. Have we reached the like that point, that tipping point of our own civilization?
I
Possibly.
agree. I
So,
honestly think we have. Um, we have. And, think about, if there is aliens in space, it's basically Elon Musk, but say 2000 years ago. You know, those
Yeah.
humans became like us. They got smart. They got sick of the planet, too populated. They think, oh, let's go to Mars. And they live in Mars. They grow potatoes. And they look back, stupid humans, and the cycle starts again. I do
And
believe
then
that
they
if there
destroy
is,
Mars.
yeah, I do believe that if there is aliens, then it's just the same cycle of this. And if it is this cycle, then the cycle isn't actually that long. It's literally in 200 years. Because if we've gone from like retards to this in 200 years, Jesus Christ, the whole planet's been around for millions of years. This is just going to keep going where we're going to become brain dead, then we're going to get smart, and then we're going to grow. I actually
Yeah.
can't wait to die. Not because I don't want to live this
No,
life, because the
it's like
afterlife,
it's
it's
the
like
next chapter.
life's so good. Like, what's next? Like, I can't wait to
Yeah.
see what's next. Like, am I going to be a ghost? Can I fly around? Like, fuck
Yeah.
me. I'm going to live this life as great as I can for the next
Yeah.
life. But when
Yeah.
people think about afterlife or they fear death, it's because they're not living this life now. It's their brain saying, listen, mate,
Right.
you're going to die soon. Start doing the shit you want to do. And they're fearing not death, but they're fearing the voice in their head of, you're not doing anything you want to do. And they're thinking, shit, time's running out. Time is running out. That's what they're fearing. Their own conscious, not the death
Yeah.
part. Not the
Yeah.
death part. Anyway, this conversation will go on for a long time. Let's end it here
Yeah.
and we'll do it. We'll continue on the next bit. I'm just going to press stop right there.
Okay.